pleasure to be here, and I'm from Hospital for Special Surgery, and I'm going to talk at the final. This is a tough talk because it's a lot of time already, so hopefully you will enjoy this. What I've been interested in and what this talk is about is taking the field and the role of sports medicine and thinking more about this from a preventive health and community-based preventive health standpoint. I do, much like all the other speakers, a lot around athlete care in the office. But for me, what my sports team has become is community-based fitness and improving general health for the populace rather than individual. And I found that to be kind of a different and really exciting new place to go with this field. And so I want to talk about it and hopefully encourage other people to think about this and something that hasn't really been done so much. So my talk is physician-directed fitness communities and strategies to more effectively promote activity and promote health. And this is last year, we have Johnson & Johnson sponsored 3 workouts last summer and this summer on the flight deck of the Intrepid, which is a big aircraft carrier in the Hudson River. And so this was last year teaching one of these fitness classes. So the concept of exercise as medicine is a great concept, meaning we want people to prescribe the medicine of exercise. And we spent a lot of time this morning in our session talking about the medicine of exercise. I'll make a couple comments on that here. But basically, the value of exercise is pretty well known. The problem we have is that we talk about it, but we've had a hard time getting those who have drunk the mayim have already drunk the mayim. Those who have not drunk the mayim are not going to drink the mayim, right? And so the question is, how do we get people who have not drunk the mayim to drink the mayim? That's the question, all right? So I'm going to look at this from the perspective of a sports medicine doctor, talking about what we started to do, and starting about 5 years ago now, is running fitness community workouts with the idea of promoting health and movement through activity. All right, so issue number 1 is unless you have been living under a rock, you know exercise is good for you. So I'm not telling you anything different. I'm going to make a couple extra comments on that, but basically we know exercise is good. It makes you live longer, healthier, happier lives in general. And this is particularly important when we start thinking about the factors of health and longevity, and has been looked at before. Medical care encompasses about 20% of what determines health. Genetics, maybe about 20%. Lifestyle, about 60%. Sleep, exercise, community, etc. That's where the real health benefit is. And that's where we really don't do very much. We spend a lot of time here. We're spending a lot of resource here. We spend lip service in the 60%. We don't do much there at all, except talk about it. So why do we not do that, and what can we start doing collectively to start thinking about that and making a difference? So one of these great comments, I think, was made by C. Everett Koop, who was the 13th Surgeon General of the United States from 1982 to 1989, who said, drugs don't work in patients who don't take them. So we say, Eze Chachma, right? I mean, that's the way to think about it. Drugs don't work in patients who don't take them. So you can have all the great ideas in the world, but if your patients don't take the medicine of exercise, then it doesn't make a difference, right? So this concept is something I've kind of evolved with personally. Initially, I would go do different races and events and bring back a medal for my nurse that would wear this around, or talk patient to patient about, you should exercise more. Let's think about how we're going to fix your knees so you will move more, etc. But then I recognized there was a bigger issue, and that is how do we get people moving in general. So I'm going to walk over here and press play on this. This was on Monday night on the Intrepid, our first workout of the summer, and we had half strengthening and half Zumba. I want to show you what it looks like when 1,000 people do Zumba at one time. So to me, that's affecting health in a very different way than one-on-one patient experience, but I think in many ways, a broader and more effective reach. So the concept is to kind of wed the worlds of fitness and medicine together. And how do we do that? How do we start thinking about it? And how do we do it collectively? Now, it's a problem in that patients who have an acute illness, if you have a UTI or a sinusitis or something somewhat acute, you're likely to take your medication. If you have a chronic illness, a chronic condition, you are much less likely, 50% less likely to take your medication. So if we're talking about the medicine of exercise, which is not I want you to exercise for a week or a month, I want you to exercise for the next 15, 20 years. That's talking about this in a chronic condition, and the efficacy of people taking medication for that long is not very good, and there's different ways that this article in New England Journal of Medicine talked about how people look at adherence, things like directly observing people taking the medicine of exercise, measuring the effect, patient questionnaires and indirect methods, patient's clinical response to the medicine you're asking them to take, even electronic medication monitors, which I guess the exercise equivalent is how many steps you're taking on your phone or on your Fitbit. But it's very difficult to get people, no matter what you're doing, to start thinking about taking the medicine you're prescribing for a long-term basis. For a short-term, easy. Longer-term, much more difficult. We're talking about changing behavior. And on top of that, we do, as health professionals, a very poor job in prescribing. We don't know how to prescribe exercise. We're not trained in how to do it. We don't really have a good mechanism to do it. And so we talk about it, but we don't really have a good way to implement this beyond just simply saying we should be doing it, which we've been saying for quite a long time. So we don't do a very good job talking about it. And there have been a couple of studies looking at this. This is a nice cartoon. Basically, on the top, they're saying what we're saying to our cats. Well, Fluffy, your quad, your fur has been pet, et cetera, et cetera. And what the cat's here is kind of nothing. And so in 2000, a study published in 2017 in Preventive Medicine, 22.9% of patients in this large study were talked about exercise in 2000. By 2010, 33%. So it's still only a third of the patients. The more education they had, the more likely they were to be talked to about exercise. And in medical schools, more than 60% of physicians in training have no exercise training at all. And so we're not doing a good job on the medical side, and that is in the face of a population which has become increasingly sedentary in the United States. If you were alive in the Paleolithic Stone Age, you took about 24,000 steps a day. If you're Amish, and so Amish in the United States have they have no cars, so they do horse and buggy or walk. You take between 18,000 and 17,000 steps a day. If you live in Colorado, the most active state in the United States, you take almost 6,500 to 7,000 steps a day. And if you're an average American, you take about 5,000 steps a day. Who here counts their steps, just curiously? Some. And again, the concept here is that we are faulty because we spend all of our medical resource in the United States, almost $3 trillion a year, treating disease after it's happened. And we spend lip service and very little thinking about preventing that disease from happening in the first place. And the end result is our medical costs keep going up. This is the United States, 1994, 2000, 2010. Obesity, 1994, this is 22% of the population, 26%. You can see by 2010, almost half the country is over 26% obesity. This is type 2 diabetes, 1994, 2000, and 2010, almost mimicking this change in body metrics in the United States. And so, again, preventable disease and the most expensive disease. A study published in JAMA 2016, $30 trillion spent over this period of time, 17 years in the United States. 2013 spending diabetes, $101 billion. Cardiovascular disease, $88 billion. Low back pain, $57 billion. So again, the top two costs for sure directly influenced by exercise. The bottom cost probably somewhat influenced by exercise. You can see this is what's happened over the years in terms of spending. And so the question is, what do? We throw up our hands and say there's nothing we can do, or we start thinking about prescribing this exercise and getting people to be excited about taking this medicine of exercise. And so, not surprisingly, my message is that exercise is medical related, it's medicine, it's health across the entire spectrum of the body, depression, anxiety, memory, sleep, common cold, hypertension, hypercholesterolemia, type 2 diabetes, osteoarthritis, osteoporosis, 13 types of cancer in a 1.4 million person study published in JAMA last year linked to exercise. So there's different reasons why this is helpful, including general musculoskeletal mobility, strength, tissue oxidation, including the brain, some new work being done on IL-6 and anti-inflammatory effective exercise made by muscle versus made by fat. So there's a number of reasons for this. The question is, how do we start getting people to do it? Now, the generic prescription from the American College of Sports Medicine is fit, frequency, intensity, type, and time, linking to about 5 times per week of 30 minutes a week, or 3 times per week of vigorous exercise, 25 minutes per week, including strength training, flexibility training, balance training. But that's just kind of a generic prescription, and when I see that, that makes me think about that 50% of people that aren't going to take that medicine in their chronic. That's not exciting at all, and nobody's going to keep doing that. If they've drunk the water, they're going to drink the water. If they've not drunk the water, that's not going to get them excited because they already know that. They already know they should be doing that. So how do we think about changing this paradigm? And there are a number of reasons why people don't do this, and so let's think about some of the reasons. And so about 5 years ago, we started this community called Iron Strength, which was a fitness community and strength training workout I kind of developed simultaneously, and the idea was to start thinking about getting people together to be excited about movement in a very different way, and it's evolved over time, and I'll talk to you a little bit about it. So the concept is physician-led fitness classes. Why? Because I kind of felt like we spent so much time talking about the medicine of exercise, and we just keep having the same discussion every year, and we don't really push the needle forward in terms of making any implementation about getting it beyond just a discussion point. Where started basically very small in the basement of a gym. One of my patients owned a gym, and I used the basement on Sunday afternoons, and started very small with about 25 people and a listserv of about 100 people. When I started doing these a couple times a month, and the idea was just to develop a fitness community for people. And so the idea then going forward is to get other people excited about this concept, etc. So let me talk you through the different steps that what work, because I know there's many in the audience I've met who have kind of talked to me about being involved in fitness, and I want to give you what has worked on our end, so maybe you can take some of these ideas and implement them where you are too. So number one was to develop a workout. And so I'm a big believer in functional strengthening. We heard in this morning sessions a lot about functional strength, and I'm a big believer in body weight functional strengthening, plyometric-based training. Had to be easy, low cost, or free, limited injury risk, and effective. Those are the things to start thinking about with a focus on kinetic chain or full body strength. Now we know a lot about strength acquisition. Plyometric training improves strength and jumping ability. Plyometric training is as effective as strength acquisition as compared to resistance training. Muscle weakness is associated with higher injury rates. So there's a lot out there in terms of the benefits of strength and functional strength. We also know that there's been some work done looking at basically, and this was published this year in Cell Metabolism in 2017, what's the most effective way of exercising? High intensity interval training, resistance training alone, or a combination of resistance training and cardio training. So this was an interesting study. They took 45 young between the ages of 18 and 30 and 27 older, 65 to 80 subjects, and they looked at them with a HIIT training program 6 days a week, a resistance training program 6 days a week, or a combined training 6 days a week. The combined was 4 days a week of cycling at 70% VO2 max and 2 days a week of weight training similar to the resistance training. They looked at what were the effects of exercise on them. So these are some of the baseline data on them. These are the study numbers, so 14 in the young HIIT group, 11 in the young resistance, 9 in the combined. This was the age 23, 25, 26. The older, 9 in their 70s, 9 in their 70s, combined 68. The BMIs were a little bit higher in the older group, but not significantly different. The body fat composition a little bit higher in the older group compared to the younger group. And the fasting glucose levels, again, glucose tolerance a little bit different in the older group, 105, 104, compared to the high 90s, but again, not hugely different. Now this is the interesting piece about this, which was that high intensity interval training, the biggest benefit was the biggest benefit of all the different three categories, and the biggest benefit of the HIIT group was 65 to 80. So mitochondrial muscle protein expression, young resistance, older resistance so this is pre versus post, young HIIT, older HIIT as an expression of cellular metabolism respiration. So the concept here was that basically high intensity interval training improved age-related decline in muscle mitochondria, and it also was explained by this kind of increase in protein synthesis with this HIIT training particularly. So we talked about this morning. I'm a big believer in HIIT, and so our workouts are HIIT-based workouts. So when I teach these, they're HIIT-based, high intensity off, which we do any place with functional body weight, things like burpees, etc. Very helpful. So we started with people that looked a lot like me, people that ran and did triathlon, and they had exercise issues, meaning they liked to do exercise a lot. It was kind of the choir was already starting at the beginning. The problems with step one is I didn't have any credibility, I didn't have a group, I didn't have any reason why people should join me. And this was a road that didn't exist in sports medicine doctors. Nobody did this. And so there were a lot of issues at the beginning because I had no idea basically how to do this, except for I knew it was a good thing and people should do it. Then I decided, all right, we got an idea here, let's try and grow this. And so the second step was how do we start growing a group of this? And so we started recruiting people to come and started developing an audience and thinking about what made people compliant, what made them want to be there and keep coming, starting to survey the people that were coming to our classes. And so these are the things that we found were helpful. Sociability. We had a talk earlier this morning on older exercisers and the effect of sociability on people in their 60s and 70s exercising, making it fun, help with consistency, results, and time efficiency. So, some interesting work on this. This study done at MIT, published earlier this year, looking at the social contagion of running, exercise contagion, the global social network. 5 years of data on Strava, 1.1 million users, social friends, so you were friends on Strava, means you were friends. 350 million miles among them. Frequency, distance, and speed looked at. So the question was, what does the effect of your friends doing exercise have on you if you're Strava friends? And the answer is, for every 1 kilometer that your friends run, you would run 3/10 of a kilometer more. For every 10 minutes of more exercise your friends did, you were going to run 3 minutes more. And this had diminishing effects over time. So this is day 1, day 2, and day 3. Women were more prone to this mimicking behavior than men, but there was a social phenomenon around mimicking what other people did, which we found in our groups too. Getting groups and getting people together excited about this seemed to make a big difference. And what about the fun piece? Well, fun makes a huge difference. Enjoyment during exercise mediates adherence. So this study published in Psychology in 2015, roughly only 50% of people comply with their exercise program more than 6 months. Again, getting back to what I talked about in the New England Journal of Medicine at the beginning, does fun make a difference? And the answer is you bet. This study done in Germany, 24 participants with 17 control subjects. The idea was to study them over an 8-week period of time, and they had the same basic premise of exercise program, just one group had fun, and one group was treated just directly with Germanic commands with no fun and no smiling at all. So let's look at the fun group. So the fun group had a group instead of solo. They had group decision making about how long and what they did. They had positive feedback. They were given positive commentary. They had intensity regulation. The workout was announced in advance of when they came to work out, and they had different forms of exercise. Zumba, strengthening, whatever, all different kinds of exercise is what they did. The control group, fitness with no social cues. Their parameters, increased cardiorespiratory exercise, increased resistant exercise, increased flexibility exercise, increased neuromotor exercise. So do this, do this, do this, with the German accent. 1 week. The intervention group and the control group. So the intervention group and the control group, basically very similar in terms of minute sessions per exercise. 8 weeks. Intervention group, the fun group, 71 minutes on average. The control group, 65. So the control group went down, the intervention group went up. They were more likely to spend more time exercising. And over the study time, the frequency, number of times exercise, increased to 7.9 in the intervention group, down to 7.2 in the control group, which was statistically significant. So I'm not going to go through this video because in the interest of time, but the concept here is that fun is also an important piece to start thinking about when we start thinking about these interventions. So what are the limitations for step number 2? Is that doctors don't really do exercise classes. It's kind of weird. Why would you do that? We had to start getting permits because our classes went from 20 people to 50 to 100 to 200, and all of a sudden we needed permits from the city of New York because we had a group that was bigger than we could have without a permit. So they started getting permits for all this stuff. I had to get fitness insurance for $200 a year because I wasn't qualified. I had to get a different kind of insurance outside of my medical malpractice insurance, which I didn't have before. So just growing pains around this. Number 3 was developing a following and spreading the word and building partnerships. So then we really started growing. We developed a direct email list, again started at 100. We started using social media, social sharing, fun venues, and partnerships. We're now up from 100 to about 34,000 people on our listserv. We have an average class attendance of 200. We use social media to promote our workouts and develop them. We've grown significantly on Twitter. Our social following has grown quite a lot, and we've really kept people engaged on this. And then finally, I want to touch on motivation, because the final piece of this is, all right, you have a good concept going, how do you keep it going, and how do you keep people motivated around this? Again, the fun piece, results, community, etc., have made a big difference. So what motivates people to stick with exercise regimens? Demographics, psychological, cognitive, emotional factors, behavioral attributes and skills, cultural support, physical environment, physical activity characteristics. There have been a number of studies and looking at what influences people who've not drunk the water to drink the water. And there's a professor down at the University of Pennsylvania who's a dual appointment in Wharton, the business school, and the Penn Med School, looking at the effects of money and paying people to work out, basically. Paying people to exercise, incentivizing them to exercise. And we're now starting to see a trend towards companies. There's a couple companies actually paying their employees. I said this morning in our session, There's a healthcare company in Kansas City that pays you $1 every day you take 10,000 steps. There are different insurance companies that are giving different premiums based on step counts and how much you move. So there's a lot now towards incentivizing wellness because we are glorified lab rats, and if you put the sugar water in the right place, we will go there. And so the concept is that basically, previously, sedentary adults respond to exercise favorably 100% of the time. So if you give us the right incentive, in this study published in the VA with 56 overweight, morbidly obese men, found that even as small as $5 a week made a significant difference in people's behavior in terms of being involved in a weight reduction program, 1 pound per week over 16 weeks. The digital world is also giving us new opportunities to track movement, track steps, and track activity, which again I think is going to be very exciting going forward. In our program, we've done a lot thinking about diversity. We've diversified what we do. So this June, we had a program in Herald Square in front of Macy's with the Nick City Dancers. We did a workout in Central Park. We had a workout with the seals inside the zoo. And then we did the Intrepid workout just the other day. So again, diversity has made a big difference for us. And so it's really changed the face of what we do. So we have things like this, or this was on the Intrepid last year during a yoga class. Or this was in Central Park this winter. This was in the zoo last year around the seal tank. And this is our class in Central Park in the morning. And this is our Zumba teacher teaching a Zumba class. We've also been lucky to start partnering with things like the New York Times. And if you've not tried this, just put in your browser 9-minute workout, and you can download this thing. This is a 9-minute workout you can just try on your phone. It's 1 minute of HIIT, 9 minutes total, and give it a try and see what you think. So to conclude, we've started looking at our population and started looking at what they want and what their responses have been. So this is who's coming. So we have kind of a wide mix of people coming to our classes, both ethnically and relationship-wise. They tend to be educated. This is their age range, so pretty broad age range. They tend to come, some just once, some more than 20 times. These are the different reasons why they come. And there are different reasons. They want increased strength, increased speed, increased endurance. These are some of the things they found that have been helpful about what we're doing. These are some of the different things they do outside of our classes. We're seeing a huge push in New York, particularly towards different types of exercise being exciting to people, so we're trying to mimic that as well. But this is the most important thing, I think, which was that in survey, does the fact that these workouts are kind of moderated by a physician make a difference? And that was a 96% yes, our strongest response. I would tell you that I think that physicians being involved in fitness and being involved in the prescription of fitness beyond just talking about it is something that's really exciting. It's something we should kind of think about going forward. So to conclude, I think the successes are we're growing, we're retaining, we're changing people's behavior, we're building a community that didn't exist, and we've had a lot of great partnerships as we grow. I think there are really not too many limitations, but it does take some time in the future. I hope we grow this internationally. So we've had a great time doing that, and I hope this makes you think about being involved in a fitness endeavor such as this. And we can start. We're doing an Iron Strength Israel. The first workout on Monday. What are the details so I can say? First station in Jerusalem at 8 p.m. Monday. What is it? 7:30 or what? 8. 8 p.m. All right, thank you very much.